Alright guys, we're going to be talking about Ronin today. We're going to be going over burst damage, we're going to be going over style, we're going to be going over the defense in the form of the sword block that everybody's so worried about. We're going to talk a little bit about this Titan more in depth and how it works with other Titans, because really LTS is a team-based game. Titan Brawl is a team-based game. All these Titan game modes are team-based. They rely very heavily on Titans working together to get the most out of them. The battery system is probably also one of the biggest mindfucks in this mode. It's also one of the most interesting dynamics that forces engagement in certain places on the map. It also changes the way that matchups work if you do get into the one-on-one situation when there's batteries on the field. Well, the advantage typically goes to the faster Titan. And batteries are going to play a huge part in this mode. I don't want to take up too much time talking about it, but knowing the openers that work depending on what positions you spawn is always a good thing to know. Knowing counters to spots where batteries are, being patient. I'll show you a couple of examples as we go along in the video. But the first thing I want to talk about is spacing and burst damage with Ronin. The principle is that once you get up close and personal, you put on a lot of damage, which means that you can actually afford to take damage on your approach. You can quickly equalize or even overtake somebody's damage if you do it correctly. And I think a lot of newer players miss that concept, so when they make their approach and they take damage, they end up panicking too early, and then they end up falling back. And in the end, they ended up doing no damage on their first approach, and then that really obviously hurts your second approach because now you're down health and you never dealt any yourself. So I think that's the first concept you want to get as a Ronin, is that it's okay to take damage. Just try to minimize as much of it as possible. So there's an Ion here. I'm going to miss this block. Luckily, he missed me too. For most Ions is to shoot their lasers right away because it makes sense, right? Maximum DPS if you shoot your laser as fast as possible so it can start recharging energy. But again, theoretical does not always mean it's the best approach. That's what leads to your shots getting blocked and you're just going to end up wasting your energy. Landing a crit on Ronin when he's not blocking, like, it really hurts. Getting knocked into mines, pushback, smoke, all that stuff really punishes his Ronin. So don't think it's too overpowered to have the sword block. The one mechanic I actually wasn't aware of even in this game, you can see that this was one of my earlier ones. I didn't even have my Titan kit on. You're going to see that mistake a little bit later on, and that's going to cost me. I'm spacing this guy correctly. I know he's got to go reload. I'm going to take that opportunity to come here and grab this. If I had phase embark, I wouldn't have gotten punished this badly. I would have been able to drop smoke a little bit sooner, phase dash away, things like that. And I'm just about at the point where we are going to start doing the mating dance of when you're doomed or when you're going up against a doomed Titan. And when you're Ronin, everyone's trying to either juggle you off or put some smoke in the way. What else do they try to do? They are trying to hit you in your crit spot as you're charging them. So you kind of have to bait a lot of things out before you get all up close and personal. Use your arc wave more and then get in for those heavy slugs. And the phase dash is probably one of the best abilities. It lets you dodge any kind of attack that has any tell, like a power shot. And let me tell you, when you miss a block on a power shot, like, it hurts. And there are times you may want to switch off to that ability. It's really a personal preference. I prefer the arc wave, especially for levels where I know there's going to be more bottlenecks or that's where people are going to be playing. I think it's going to be a personal preference and how you're planning on making your approaches. I like the double arc waves. I like having a medium to long range attack when I'm Ronin. Right now this guy has been spending his energy. I should be able to pop out and put on some good damage. If you look at the mini-map, you see that one of our teammates is behind them. I'm going to wait till he makes his approach and then I'm going to pop out again. Between me and him, we're going to doom this guy so quickly. Don't forget to put your Titan on hold because that's what can happen. That was actually one of the things I had to get used to, where you were going to position your Titan. Sometimes you can actually get away with putting your Titan pretty far, keeping it pretty safe, and taking a pilot approach. Which ability should you use? The ability that you're going to hear most about is probably Stim, because it makes you go faster, means you can reach a battery faster. If you want to take a safer approach, you can use phase shift, and once you grab it, you can just phase shift out, and there's no way that anybody's going to kill you. It's going to give you more than enough invincibility to get away once you grab the battery if you save the phase shift for once you grabbed it. If not, you can use one to approach and then at least have one to get away with. Let me tell you something about the combo. If you have the ability to doom somebody with an arc wave or a shotgun, always take that approach and then use a melee, because if you try to melee to doom somebody, usually it'll knock them back a bit and make the follow-up melee a little bit harder because they're going to try to counter space you. It gives them room to maneuver, drop smoke, drop mines, drop clusters, all that stuff. But that's not to say that you should never do this. None of this is gospel. It's really going to depend on what you're doing. There's so many different combos. You can use the pushback from the sword to go into an arc wave and then into a couple shotgun shots, or pushback to shotgun shot for crit and then back into arc wave or block. The combos are just endless. It's really going to depend on what's going on. That's why this is such a micro extensive Titan. You have to do a lot to get the maximum benefits out of it. And this is one of those scenarios that is unique to LTS. The batteries in this mode, now that it's one-on-one, completely changes the dynamic of the game. And being the faster Titan, I should have the advantage. I should be able to run around and position myself for batteries. However, the map layout makes a big difference. Right now for Scorch, this isn't actually too bad. He's able to get some sight lines enough to throw some thermite on the battery sites. And I'm going to take a tangent for a second. If you guys want to see probably the best LTS player I've ever seen, it's Dino. Sword, I'm going to link his channel. Check him out because he does all the one-on-one explanations. It's a great place to start. He is going to put you in the hyperbolic time chamber and you're going to know everything about Titans by the time you come out. You're going to learn, I don't know how many things you're going to learn per episode, but it's going to be a lot. You'll probably cover most of the things you're going to need to know to play any Titan. Just one episode and I guarantee you're going to come out ahead of wherever you are if you've never seen one of his videos. I was watching him on stream the other day and he was playing with just a person who's a really good supportive player. Between that and Dino's callouts, they worked really well together. Now this is a little bit different than something you would see in LTS. This right now is Titan Brawl. And there's no battery, so there's no reason for them to come out to midfield or challenge any of those positions. So they're just going to hold back and start hitting us as we try to come up on them. And I think they may have noticed that we already had a lot of Ronins, or they just suspected it anyways. And this is the first counter that goes into people's mind when they take on Ronin. They're like, just stand back and be defensive. And yes, it will work, but if we break you once, it's going to be hard for you to regain that positioning. But now look how much I'm losing just while holding block. Imagine where I'd be if I didn't have block. I would just have been incinerated. And the thing is, I don't have the choice to fight at long range like any of the other Titans. They all have abilities. The Ion has laser shot, Northstar has a sniper, and Legion has a far range power shot. And then it could just also just lay some cover fire with its gun shield while taking relatively little damage. So you have to expect that somebody in a state that always has to be in close quarters combat is going to have some sort of ability to either cut the distance and take minimal damage, or at least go away from an engagement while taking minimum damage. Because the thing is, you're always forced to be the aggressor, and it's not as easy as it sounds. It's very micro intensive. You have to make a lot of small decisions, a lot of small corrections. You have to really be aware of your own positioning, because when you are caught out and you miss a block, you are going to be hurting. But this goes back to the first thing that we talked about. When you take damage as a Ronin, that doesn't mean you give up. You take your punches, you lick your wounds, you try to minimize as much as you can, and then you try to deal out damage. That is the Ronin way. You try to put up your dukes while putting up your blocks. This is basically Wing Chun. And I was watching all the Ip Man movies. You know that shot at the end of, I think it's number 2. In that final fight, the karate guy gets up and they show a close-up of his feet as he stands up. Lethal. Northstar is a great Titan. From the back, it baits out people. It's the dynamic that certain Titan brings. Like when I see a Northstar in the back of the field, usually I try to prioritize him because he puts out big DPS from far away and he feels super safe, so I feel like I need to put some damage on him, or at least put on some sort of checks on him. I can't just let him freely shoot at me. But I find that since they are pretty maneuverable, they can sometimes bait you too far out and then their team capitalizes on you being out of position. But attrition and Titan Brawl aside, if you're looking to play LTS, I think the most rewarding experience is going to come from playing with a team. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of combos, there's a lot of strategies that you can use in the game type if you have a team to coordinate with. And I think that's where you're going to really learn how fun this mode can be once you see all the elements at play. Love Titan Brawl because it let me experiment. I've actually started seeing a lot of different builds in LTS. Well, they're at least new to me because I wasn't playing it too much. But what I did notice was that Legions and Scorches that I thought were a lot weaker when I first started playing, especially in Titan Brawl, were a lot stronger in LTS when they were supported by a good team and they were forcing you into locations you didn't want to be in, or they were using just synergy between their Titans in order to get a lot of DPS. They were locking down batteries, things like that. There's still a little bit of time left on the video. I was thinking about going on to Ion, and I don't know what people's views are on Ions. He's a really easy Titan to use. He can cause some huge DPS, especially it's really good against punishing newer players. I'll say that. It's definitely the noob killer. But we'll address that in a different video. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.